TTRPG pitching a Death Note TTRPG. So there's two big things I want to pitch if I want to pitch a Death Note TTRPG. One, first of all, is fuck the GM. We're gonna have a Shinigami. Like the GM is gonna be its own God of Death character with its own like cool like look and its own reasons and motives to have dropped the Death Note. Its own agenda, maybe. It doesn't have to be like, carelessly just watching what humans do. So that's an interesting bit. Another thing's going to be is that we can actually split the table in two and have one group facing the other. One is investigators, another is Death Note users. Now the users are going to have their own motives. It can be like creating a religious cult that spans the world over, or a new like international legal system based on punitive action via the Death Note. And the investigators of course have to catch. Now, as the users achieve objectives and push their luck to achieve those objectives, they're going to become exposed. And this is going to basically create breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are going to be points that as the users, do their shit and leave breadcrumbs behind, then the investigators get to use. Because of the competitive aspect of this sort of game, what we're going to have is two modes of play. One is going to be the cat and mouse game, which basically is a session in which you have the Shinigami and one group of players. For example, the first session, you're going to have the users. And the users are going to start using the Death Note and they're going to be leaving breadcrumbs. So that the next session, the Shinigami takes over, and with the investigators get given the breadcrumbs that the users left, and they can use that as a play can alternate into these two phases until we might hit a point where we're going to real climax. And in this sort of session, we have both groups at the same time. To make matters more complex and more interesting, like players are going to be able to buy with some sort of like resource other characters, so they can play different characters at different times to sort of like muddy things up and make it unclear who is using the Death Note, who is complicit but not using it, who is basically just a bystander. It can be very cool. Also, why the fuck would we use dice if the actual story has a board game where you chuck skulls into a little bowl? So we should actually mechanize. So what I did was to grab a piece of paper and divide it in 4 sections. We have pass, a fail, a pass but that adds 1 breadcrumb, and a fail that adds 1 breadcrumb. And what I'm going to do is to grab a clear glass dish and put it right there, dead center. I'm going to grab a bunch of tokens and I'm going to roll them. And so you can see here that we have, for example, 4 tokens in the fail, 3 in the pass plus 1 breadcrumb, and 1 in the pass. So there might be mechanics where like players get to move like a token clockwise or counterclockwise and stuff like that, but they can basically use these in different checks, or we can basically do some sort of system around this whole play, and it's going to be very cool, very thematic, because you're basically imitating the game that the Shinigamis play in the series. So now we have clear player roles, we have clear goals for each of the groups of players, and we have a thematic set of mechanics that are interesting and that go with the themes and the imagery of the series. So what's next? Well, probably like a couple of ideas. How do you play around with the design space of the clear plate and the little board with the tokens? Well, you could have skills that move one token to the other. You could have skills, for example, that if they're like, say, an investigator does something to sort of like distract the the users. Like maybe at some point the users, if they are going to do a check, they actually need to be blindfolded when they're going to pick up the thing to figure out if they pass or fail. There's just so much stuff, like for example, skills that allow you to grab a bunch of tokens at random and re-roll them, and that might hit other tokens and move them and shit. It can be very chaotic, can be very fun, but that's my take. And I think I covered all bases for sort of like the bones of a Death Note TTRPG. If you have any sort of like suggestions of manga series, movies, or novels that you want me to tackle and try and give you like a pitch, let me know in the comments. Thanks for coming by.